All right, Neil, good to see you. Excited to be able
Yeah,
to talk with you
amazing.
today. We're going to be covering how to, I think, work with AI code components in Webflow, and then just also get a sense of like the work that you've been doing, what you're seeing in the market. But before we get started, I'd love to just maybe get a quick intro from you and what's your background?
Yeah, Mason, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. My name's Neil. I'm a product manager here at Webflow. I work on a lot of our AI features. Lately, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about code generation, which has manifested itself in AI code components. It's a feature we released just a few weeks ago, and it enables anybody to use AI to create a React component that works in their Webflow site. Background outside of that, I've been working on AI and machine learning products for a very long time now, uh, longer than I want to count on like a live video. In my free time, I try to make art with code, which is something I've been doing for around 7 or so years. Really, like when I moved from like a data science role into a product role, when I stopped writing code at work. But yeah, here in Atlanta, Georgia, same part of the country as you, and excited to talk about AI.
Awesome. And just to be able to throw a plug out there, you have a like in-person AI community that you run. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, it's on meetup.com. It's AI Ship and Social. I also post about it on LinkedIn all the time. And it's a really interesting group because, this is obviously a very interesting time for anything AI related. We started it in the beginning of the year. It's actually the second time I've tried to start it. And it started as a meetup for, cross-functional team members who ship AI products. So design, marketing, engineering, anybody, just because it takes a lot of people to ship an AI product, and the nuances of building an AI product are different for everyone, like marketing, design, etc. It has evolved a bit where we're also starting to talk a lot about building things with AI, which is related to AI code components. There's just this advent of agentic engineering, which has grown out of vibe coding, and I don't know. The way that we do work, the way that everyone does work, either has already changed or is about to change, depending on where you are on this journey. And it's just a really interesting time to get people together to talk about it. There are a lot of people who want to learn more. There are a lot of people who are already doing it, and they're trying to figure out how to do a better job of it. And needless to say, the standards of how you build like an agentic engineering harness to work on your software are changing, every few weeks probably.
Yeah,
So yeah, AI Ship and Social. We have an event next Tuesday, but also we have something every month, and would love to see everyone come if you're in Atlanta.
awesome. Yeah. The posts you make after the fact always look really great. And I feel like this coming week, you've got one on the 8th. Is that right?
I think it's the ninth. It's
Is it the
next
ninth?
Tuesday.
I would show up a day earlier. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Um, and you have a guest from MailChimp.
Yeah, so I was at MailChimp for 8 years. Nitish Pandey is a really good friend of mine. We worked together for a long time on the data science team. And he's going to be talking about how they built a self serve business intelligence agent. So it's an agent that anyone can ask a question. It will respond with an answer as well as a SQL query and some charts. And the idea is that an agent like this takes care of the really simple, quick requests so that their data science team and their analytics team can really sink their teeth into the harder questions that are not so easy to answer in just a few minutes. And yeah, Nitish is going to be talking about the architecture of the agent that they built, the the pitfalls, how much it costs, how they make sure that it's secure, how they make sure that it doesn't quote unquote hallucinate and make up answers, because it's obviously there's a lot of hype around AI and all the things it can do. There are a
Yeah.
lot of people who are also just talking about how everything's like a letdown and nothing works. I personally get a ton of benefit out of it. I know a ton of people who do, but it's really good to see a very practical application of AI, like a business intelligence agent, and to understand that, like, yeah, this can have a real impact on your day to day life right now if you know what to do and if you know how to do it.
Well, and I think, you mentioned sort of like this um, maybe questioning that people are having now. Like, oh, maybe it's, because I think for a long time, a lot of the stuff has been sold by marketing teams as a magic wand. and it's just like lots of sparkle and glitz there, and there is some magic, but like it is not a magic wand, right? And there's different ways of working with it. It seems like probably as a general trend, we're in the trough of disillusionment. Like, it's like all the hype bubble and then it's like, oh, and then, but I feel like that's really where you start to see more of the practical use cases and, the real businesses that come out of that. And I'm curious, like, as someone that's been, you don't have to say, number of years, but I mean, how did you get started working in AI? Because it wasn't just like ChatGPT, like 3.5 came around and you're like, oh, this is awesome, which is really for me where, I started. But how did you get started?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back quite a bit, but there's a reason I'm doing that. So, like,
Cool.
my first career out of grad school was actually at a revenue management consulting firm. So we would do forecasting, price optimization, and in the early 2010s, like this concept of like data science came up, which is like statistics, but you're working with text and unstructured data and machine learning and stuff like that. So that's when I joined MailChimp as a data scientist, and got exposed to this new world of like newer algorithms and the applications of them. And those things were also kind of sold as like a magic wand at the time. And like there's this battle has always existed where it's like things are maybe overpromised, but there is a ton of value, and we all know like what's around the corner. In any case, I worked in like machine learning and data science products, like product recommendations, lifetime valuation, stuff like that. I worked in that space for a long time, and then I was at a startup called Mutiny, which did B2B personalization for like websites.
Yeah.
And that's around the time that I don't remember if it was GPT-2 or 2.5, but that started to become real. And it's actually like a very clear extension of the stuff that I was doing before and that a lot of people were doing before, where with machine learning and recommendations and ranking systems, there was this promise that's like, oh, we're going to tell you what to do, and then someday we're going to be able to do it for you. Well, that was like the first glimpse of like doing things for people. Granted, very specific things like writing copy for the most part.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the first glimpse. And so a lot of people who were in the data science and machine learning space naturally progressed into AI as it became a thing. So again, for me, that was around, I think, summer of 2021. Worked through all of the ups and downs of like that era of generative AI where obviously everyone knew what was about to happen, but it was really underwhelming in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And the UX of how these things worked was so different because you had to prepare for like the inevitable failure of the feature, which you still do in many ways.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it would fail to just like write a coherent sentence some of the time, whereas now it's not really a problem. But yeah, copy generation of the summer 2021 era eventually became agents. And so I was working at Automatic a couple of years ago, who's known for WordPress and WooCommerce. And we were building out the AI assistant and the AI site builder. And again, like, the copy generation part was kind of not a problem at that point. But suddenly getting an agent to understand what it can and can't do was a huge problem, because when you put this text box and you're like, hey, this thing will do everything for you, people will ask it to do something that is not one of the 5 things it can actually do.
Yeah.
And so since then, it's just been a wild ride as both the models advanced, but also really like the architecture behind the models have advanced, or the architecture, I would say, that's used to orchestrate all these different models and to understand kind of like what can you actually do, how do you do it. And like this is why things work the way they do today, where like you can ask Claude to do something and it will understand what the tools at its disposal are and how it uses them, and string together multiple tasks into like some sort of compound output that solves your problem. And yeah, I don't know, it's been a fast-paced couple of years. I don't know if it has been for you as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and we, I think I've really been trying to think about not just like how to think about the tooling, but what are the impacts of the tooling and how will that start to reshape the market? I feel like that's starting to get a name now, like answer engine optimization is, I think, shorthand for just the future of the internet. And it's great to be able to see like marketers starting to wake up to like, oh, a lot of this stuff is changing. I've got to change like how I'm operating. I feel like in many ways the web is becoming more human as a result of that, where before this focus, it was like a lot of focus on things that I find really inhuman, like just keyword optimization, right? Which isn't necessarily how anyone naturally talks or works or anything, or like these silos of, you'd have a brand team working and a web team working and a PR team working and, like a go to market group and all that, but no one is actually working together. And I feel like what we're seeing is there's much more of a need to actually be truthful on what you do. Like, I know that sounds wild, but it's like, as you almost have to like really focus on brand, really focus on what you're good at, what you're not good at, have people that are saying nice things about you, which brand is always about like what other people should be saying about you, not just what you say about yourself. So I think that's the exciting part. And kind of interestingly as well, like on the tooling side, we launched Slater, I think in 2023, which is the JavaScript management platform that happens to have, code generation kind of alongside of it. It was interesting to sort of launch that into the, at the time, very no code focused community, and all of a sudden be like, whoa, why are we making code here? And I'm like, well, I mean, you can just ask, the agent about the code, and it was effectively, and Slater is like really heavily kind of built on ChatGPT 4 or in 3 and 3.5 and whatever, and a lot of JavaScript management that happens there. But yeah, I mean, I know what you've been doing really kind of takes those early beginnings and ratchets it up. So yeah, I'd love to hear like how you're seeing the future and what this means for Webflow, and what's that shift been like as well internally of going from like, no code to like, oh, code's okay. We can have more people in the sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting shift. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about there. You were talking about 2003. I was talking about 2001. It's very clear that like.
Oh, I'm sorry, 23, not 2003.
Sorry,
because 2003 I was still working in Flash.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you were talking about 23. I was talking about 21, and it's very clear like every 6 months, like things change pretty substantially. Yep. Like 23 was a very different world than it is now, and I can imagine how, again, if we're talking about the promise of these capabilities, and the minute you see a glimpse of it, you're like, oh, this is where this is going. Yep. The minute people started to see code generation, the obvious thing that was going to happen was like, oh, anybody will be able to code. I would say that for quite a while, it was still really just only for developers. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like code generation, anyone could do it, but you had to have like a strong sense of what you needed to do, what you needed it to do, how to debug it when it went wrong, like what to tell it. And I'd say that's kind of going away, for, again, a wide variety of reasons. One is just this idea of like improved harness and context engineering that is enabling agents like Cursor and Claude to write code better. The other is obviously that, originally these models would just predict text, and they've since gone through like years of reinforcement learning to predict text that will compile, rather than, because like that's a thing that is a ground truth. You can tell if something compiles or not, and that they're able to bootstrap these models to make sure that they write code that compiles. And so I would say that now code generation is approaching this point where it is friendly to people who don't know how to code. I would say that it is still like, it's better if you understand like how to describe exactly what you want. Yeah. If you have strong opinions, you're more likely to get the outcome that you're really excited about. But it's starting to become really approachable. And so, you're asking like, what has it been like to see this transformation? It's changing a lot about how we think about personas. Just like, like even in Webflow, like you can get like a designer seat or a marketer seat or something. And we're talking about like, oh, we're building for marketers, we're building for designers. Well, we're building this thing that is typically like a job to be done for a developer, but we're building it in a way that like a designer or a marketer should not have any issues
Yep.
using it. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of changing everything. It's hard to even understand where to start. And yeah, as for like how people build websites, I'm hoping that, you know, the reality of these tools is that if you give it the same prompt 50 times, like it'll generate things that are like pretty similar.
Yeah.
But I think as people start to form opinions and like expertise on how to work with these things to be more specific and to get exactly what they want, I'm hoping that we'll see kind of an explosion of creativity and individuality on the internet after what feels like 2 decades of just walled gardens and sameness and
Yeah.
Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. And I think with that, there's sort of a shift around like even the nature of software. And that for a long time, software was something that you sort of adopted and then you conformed around. And I feel like the biggest shift is now like adopting software that ideally conforms around you. Or that the other thing that we're starting to look at is the notion of ephemeral software, where it's like kind of like just building a spreadsheet, right? So you don't think anything about building a spreadsheet or a presentation that you're going to use once or twice and then throw away. And so on projects like now we're going and building, kind of these micro applications that are really good at one type of use case and are probably not great at everything, but they get us across the line and it saved us a bunch of time or just whatever that might be. And then, we're not trying to launch a SaaS app or get VC funding from it. It might be something we open source or just like forget about. But I think that's a big, big shift as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think ephemeral is a great word to use in conjunction with code right now. As we talk about agentic engineering and the acceleration of generating any asset, whether it's a website or an app, I think there's two ways in which software becomes ephemeral. One is like I think your actual code base becomes sacred, and like you have to be willing to build stuff or let an agent build something for you that you then later decide you don't want or you don't need.
Yep.
Or it wasn't the right fit. Imagine it's 5-6 p.m. You're about to like head home, just kick something off. The next morning you come in and you're like, oh, this is great, or oh, this isn't quite it. Let's throw
Yeah.
it away. It's gonna be like it's going to take you nothing to explore opportunities like that. But then, yeah, additionally, a few years ago, you might have spent months trying to build like a game for your website that's
Yeah.
for an event. And now you can do that every week if you wanted in probably 30 minutes each week. And just like throw it away afterwards.
Yep.
I have friends who around the holidays, this is the first time it happened. 2 different friends sent me just like a holiday app instead of a card.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was just like that's a thing that like maybe they looked at again, maybe they didn't, maybe
Yep.
they used for like a few weeks, maybe it's just a fun experience for their friends. One of these friends was like a software engineer, and it was like an architecturally more interesting app. The other
Hmm.
one is a PM, and she built this like amazing app that was kind of like a wrap up of all the concerts that you saw that year. And
Cool.
so, yeah, ephemeral is a good way to describe software, but only because it's going to become very easy to solve individual problems,
Yep.
to like, bring a little bit of joy to someone's day, or to experiment.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the thing that we were also seeing, and something that I think that probably doesn't get talked about enough, is trying to have really good primitives that we can work from. So, like I love Webflow Cloud, and we do all sorts of work on top of Webflow Cloud. Mostly just because we can go and build things and then deploy on top of that. I'm excited with like code components now again, so that we can like build something. Maybe it's a pricing table or some type of interactive thing for the hero, and then we've got a place for that to live and a way to be able to connect into it. And so I think it's changing the nature of what we're even trying to think about for what we need, as opposed to again before it was I think a lot more straightforward. So.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I'd love to be able to get into a bit of like the nuts and bolts here. So I know you've got a couple things that are prepared. Maybe we can switch over to a demo, and while you're doing that, I will check on just kind of some of our streams and see if we've got questions or what might be happening over there.
Yeah, sounds great. So
so-
let me pull up this Webflow site I have. And this is one I grabbed from, we have this gallery of sites that you can clone. This is a pretty nice looking site with a very specific sort of style and color scheme. And what I'm going to show you today is the feature we launched recently called AI Code Components. And like I said, it enables you to generate a code component inside of Webflow with an AI assistant. Code components are another like more recent Webflow functionality. And what that enables you to do, what it used to enable you to do, is to build a React component outside of Webflow and import it, and then customize it with props and slots and things like that. Now you can build them inside of Webflow. So I'm going to head over to this components menu, click this new component button, and go to generate with AI. And we'll be taken to this splash screen where you can type exactly what you want, or you have some starter ideas. In the interest of just kind of like keeping it simple, I'm going to click this starter idea. It populates the text box, which you can then modify to suit your specific needs. But let's send it and see what happens. And now we're on the component canvas. This is kind of an infinitely scrollable canvas where you can see components, variants of components, and we've got the code for the component here on the left, which you can close. Like, you don't have to look at it at all. You don't have to interact with it. And we have the AI assistant on the right. And you can see that it's telling us what it's doing as it works. So it's examining the skills that it has. It captured the site's styles. It read the current code of the component just to see what the starting point is. And now it's just going, it's going at it and writing the code for our React code component. And again, in case someone didn't read it, what I suggested was that we create a pricing section with a slider for web traffic. And this is the sort of thing that used to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do in Webflow. And now you can get it in 30 seconds.
Amazing. And kind of while this is working, can you close that, or do you have to keep it open? Like what?
So right now, you do have to keep it open. I think there is a future in which we have kind of like these back-end agents who are working for you. We are starting to work on and release some features that work that way. This one is kind of like very synchronous and interactive.
And is there a token limit, or am I going to come back in with, like with Claude, where I'm always like hitting oh, you're done for today. And I'm like, Claude, but I still have work to do.
Yeah. So right now you can use AI code components for free as much as you would like. In the future, we are going to be enforcing what we call AI credits. And these are credits that you can purchase. Also, all enterprise plans come with a ton of AI credits. All plans actually come with some AI credits. But you can purchase packages of AI credits. The free credits that come with your plan every month, you can use either to accomplish some basic tasks or just to try things out. And if you really like it and you really want to, dig into it, you can buy more credit packs.
Amazing. So it sounds like a good time to just like be playing around in here.
100%, yeah.
This looks awesome.
Yes.
Now,
so if you remember what that site looked like, it had this same sort of like font and color scheme. We can go to this preview button to see how this interaction works. We could fine tune it. So for example, I might ask it to make this more of a smooth kind of slider. And then we can also just embed it in our site. We can create variants. We can do all sorts of stuff.
Now, how did this application pick like the type and color? Because like this all looks really good. A lot of the stuff that I'm building just with Codex or Claude, and again, like, I think you'd mentioned like kind of anyone can go and do this stuff. What I see is that like there's people like Chesley and Pitar and Wit on our team that are just like overall better at doing this. And so I'm curious, like, what's the secret sauce that you brought here that kind of made us get to this point?
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is we have your site and all of your content to help inform what we build for you. And this is something that we're working to do both internally and through MCP, through our MCP server, so that you could do this externally through Claude. But we want to make sure that when you build something, it's on brand, it makes sense. And so this ingests your website. Even if you don't have variables, it will ingest your website and try to understand, how do I make this look like it would fit into their site? And a thing that we're actually beta testing, it's not in the public version of this, is full integration with visual editing. That's going to be like a bit of a journey, but right now I could actually visually edit this
Oh,
using the
wow.
style panel. And so, the goal is that when you work with Webflow with an agent, whether it's our agent that we're using right here or something like Claude, we're enabling you to build something that is more on brand and more accurate to your brand, your workflows, your tone and voice right off the bat. But then also you get everything that you expect from Webflow. So we're going to be working on full interoperability with stuff like visual editing and all of the other analyze, optimize type features.
That's really cool. Yeah, because right now it's like when we're doing stuff, it's sort of the one shot type of thing where it's like we'll go and create something. We're like, oh man, this looks awesome. Like I was making some wireframes this morning on something based on a brief. And then I was like, hey, can we go in and add, I was just trying to fiddle with some of the layout, and then it just got worse.
Yeah.
And so being able to have direct manipulation at that last like 10 to 20% is just incredible.
Yeah, there's like this kind of meme of sorts that back when AI was basically copy generation and, image generation, like Midjourney, there was this meme that was going around that was like, I wanted AI to do my dishes so that I could make art, but instead AI is making art and I'm doing my dishes. I feel like obviously that's funny and like, it was very much of the time, but
Yeah.
there is a real truth to it in that there was this immediate trade-off that happened. And I think that for a lot of people who don't know how to code, AI made getting to this point infinitely easier. Like I can't even say 100 times easier. This is a thing that was maybe like you couldn't do it all, or you would have to learn a tremendous amount of information in order to make this. Uh, but it made the last part harder, where
Yeah.
like all the stuff you used to do, you couldn't do. And so we have a beta starting next week for this visual editing capability, and we're working to make what used to be the easy part and what became the hard part. We're working to make that easy again. So here's another example. Like you can use the style panel. There's all sorts of stuff you could do. I might also click this thing, and now it's passed as context to the agent. So I can say, make this slider smooth. I probably could have been more descriptive there, but let's see what it does.
Make the logo bigger. I mean,
Yeah.
who hasn't gotten vague feedback before?
Yeah, and it's like I said, with any AI tool, the more specific you are, the better. And so prior to introducing that capability, which is a subset of this sort of like visual editing work that we're doing, you would have to just like generally prompt the component. And if you had two sliders, you'd have to say, hey, make that one slider smooth. And there's no telling if that would work or not. Now you can click it and say like, hey, change this specific thing. Or you can click it and perhaps just adjust something via the style panel. So let's go to the preview, live demo. Okay, that's great. I was worried because you never know what AI is going to do. But it did what we wanted. And I can now head to the home page. And let's drag this in. Pricing section right at the top. And yeah, we have this on-brand pricing section. It fits into your page. I think there's some work to do based on like where I've decided to put it.
Yeah.
But this is great.
That's incredible. Now, if I had a design that was coming from Figma, is there a way where I could throw in an image to Webflow to be able to create that, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So right now, I'm going to open this again. I may have stopped this in the middle of it doing some work or a second ago. But you can add an image just by doing this right here. I think you can paste it as well. And it does a really good job of responding to images. Obviously, it's not necessarily perfect. It depends on like the amount of detail in your image.
Sure.
But yeah, you can add images. It's a really popular way to get started.
Yeah, because I think that, it's like if something is being designed and it's in Figma and it gets approved by a client, and then it's like, okay, now I've got this on my desk and I need to be able to build it, starting with an image could definitely be a way to get that going. And what about like, I think a use case that I often see that's really kind of painful, sliders that, would work with sliders just in general, or sliders that work with collections, or maybe sort and filter that works with collections. How does code components work with collections?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's one of our top priorities, but we don't have native support for collections yet.
Okay.
Like I said, our goal is to make this code fully interoperable with everything that Webflow has to offer, and collections and visual editing are our two top priorities here.
Cool.
Right now, you can't integrate a collection, but what we are planning on, like, let me just describe kind of the experience
Okay.
that we're building towards, which we should have soon. I can't put a date on it. The idea is you might say, hey, build like a location finder. And it will look through your collections to understand what, is there a locations collection I should be using? It can talk to you about that. And then it will integrate a collection in a way that renders cleanly. So like there'll be some amount of server side rendering so that if a bot crawls your website, it will see the rendered code with the collection rather than just like a placeholder. And it will stay up to date with the public items in your collection. That isn't the thing we support right now. There are ways to do it. It's a little bit, it's not yet like, hey, just add a collection and it works for you. But we've seen people who actually stand up Webflow cloud instances that interact with our content delivery API to kind of be the middleware between a collection and any sort of client-side code.
Cool. Well, I think that directionally sounds amazing. And I know it's kind of one step at a time. If you're like, hey, we got code components, they're AI generated, and being able to create them on brand. So that's, those three things right there are pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Where does this code live? Like if I wanted to go back in and edit something like just by hand, can I do that? Or where can I find it?
Yeah. So, again, open the component menu. We're looking at this one right now, but if we weren't,
Okay.
there would be an open component button here. And the code is right here. Right now, it's a single file. We're working on multi-file support that will enable more complex components or a component that is made of multiple smaller components. But yeah, it's right here right now.
Okay. So, and this is just kind of like a standard, like Webflow code element. Is that right? Like if I was to go in and have like a code embed in my file, or what does that mean?
I would say it's a little bit different. The editor itself is different. While you're working on it, we have a sandbox that's being used to kind of like render the code for you. And then once you publish this to your site, it works like our existing externally synced code components, where we kind of have a cloud worker that will render it for you. And so it's not quite the same, I would say, as like a code embed in your site. It's supposed to be just like very smooth and effortless.
Cool. And I just haven't opened up Webflow in a while, but I noticed you're sort of like zooming and panning on the canvas. Is that live? Or am I getting a preview of something else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is live. So this is the component canvas,
Okay.
which enables you, I could say create a dark mode variant or a mobile variant. Component canvas is kind of like an experience that enables you to see a lot of different components at once and a lot of variants at once.
Cool. Well, Webflow's obviously come a long way in the last 11 years. And every time I'm like opening up, the canvas, because we do a lot of, we actually create a lot of our new business pitches in Webflow, and, just real basic stuff is probably what I'm working on. But it's cool to see the different parts like this that have been able to come around.
Yeah, definitely an exciting time for the web, and we're doing everything we can to just enable people to work in modern ways.
Yeah. There was an announcement around like the Codex, I believe it was Codex integration. I don't know if you know anything about that. I know it's not like your specific area of focus, but if you've been able to play with it or give anyone like a preview of that.
I don't have as much to say about that one, unfortunately. We have a lot of cool partnerships that are either out or that we're working on. It's just a really interesting time, and we're trying to enable people to build however they want to build, if that makes sense. I think it's with so many options coming up, it's becoming hard. We don't want to stop people from like taking advantage of like whatever's new and like works well for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough to, it's, as I was saying, it's like really tough to just keep up with everything. And then it's tough to keep up with stuff within Webflow. With, with what you're working on, what do you say is like a use case that people should avoid or hold off on for now versus like one that's like really great? Like, what are you kind of thinking is the place where people should get started or to try to avoid?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I mentioned already that we don't yet have just like native turnkey CMS support. It's coming very soon.
Okay.
So if you want to just be able to say like, hey, build a slider for the CMS collection, we're not there just yet. As I mentioned earlier, it's very possible to build that if you know how to work with cloud or to stand up some sort of cloud worker that will be the intermediary between your collection and your server, your client side code.
Yep.
But that's going to become very easy soon. So if you want that to be as easy as possible, just wait a little bit. As for things that I think are immediately easy, anything interactive that doesn't require an external data source, you can knock out right now. Anything with cool advanced graphics or dependencies that you couldn't do before is now very easy. We actually had a community challenge that we launched when we announced this feature or when we released this feature. And we saw people build some amazing stuff. Would it be a good time to show some examples?
Yeah, I'd love to see what you were seeing there.
Yeah. And I have the names elsewhere of everyone who made this, but like, here's this really great interactive globe. This is something you could do for like a location finder for your offices or just as like a cool background. Here's like a dragon carousel that scrolls infinitely and has like some slight effects on it. Here's a timeline that actually reacts to your scrolling. So like a really interesting like way to tell a cool story on your website. All sorts of like apps. Let me refresh this one. This is one where you can effectively just like create halftone images and tweak them in various ways. And like, so we're seeing stuff that's decorative, stuff that's practical, stuff that's fun. Here's like a live tracker of the World Cup, which I don't think has started, but this person is going to be using it.
No, it's supposed to get going, I guess, around like the 16th, 17th of this month.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, and like, this person really went above and beyond and built a trip planner.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah, so I don't know, let's plan a trip. I decided to skip location finding, which I find is always incorrect about where I live anyway. But let's say I plan on going to Thailand. And all right, popular. Oh, maybe that was already a popular destination. Yeah, let's place a pin there. Sorry, the screen sharing thing was blocking the continue
Oh,
button.
no problem.
Just traveling. Let's say it's a couple. When are we going? All right, I have to make something up now. This is getting serious. Let's say I'm going in October, which is probably a good time to go. And yeah, it's a long trip. I'm flexible. 23 nights. Wow. All right. Actually, that's actually way too long. Let's
Well, I
go
mean,
for
if you're going to Thailand, you want to spend some time. So,
yeah. Let's go mid range.
yeah.
Let's go see what there is to do. Love food. Love history. And this is like an advanced workflow with multiple states and stages.
Wow. Yeah.
Street food, seafood. No special requirements. Anything else? No. And yeah, people, right now, if you have the know-how, you can take this well beyond just a front end component. You can connect it to a back end. You can connect it to a lot of external data services. And so I'm in no way trying to suggest those are off limits. They
Hmm.
might take a little bit more know-how right now, much in the same way that 2 years ago, coding with AI probably was more approachable to people who actually knew how to code.
Sure.
But if you want to just build something cool for your front end, some animations, a pricing section, a more static slider, it's very easy to build those right now. You can do it in just like a minute or two. But if you have the time to put into it, you can build like an entire vacation planner.
Wow. Well, and like a multi-step form has never been easy, right?
No.
Even with all of, I mean, of like one of the reasons why we started building Slater was I was just like really frustrated with like visual logic in Webflow, and I was like, I should just be able to make some code and like do that. And so like being able to see this now, and the process is not like go and try to drag a bunch of boxes around and wave my hands around what I want this to do, but more like either visually declare or kind of through prompting be able to get to this place.
Yeah, and I mentioned before that, I would say a year ago, AI coding was just purely prompting. You would
Yep.
ask it to do something, and if it was like, if you wanted to change text, you would have to tell it, change this word to this other word.
Yep.
Obviously, things are evolving now. I kind of gave you a preview of some of the visual editing that we're working on.
Yep.
But I think that things are generally moving towards a future in which there's like an extreme amount of flexibility between these two extremes where like
Yeah.
you don't have to decide build it entirely by hand or build it entirely by prompting, but you can take the parts of each workflow that work for you and utilize them. And so I don't know, things are going in a really interesting direction. I think it's going to enable people, again, if we go back to this idea of like doing the dishes versus making art, everyone's dishes and everyone's art are like a slightly different thing.
Yeah.
And I see things going to a place where you get to decide which parts you want to do, and you get to not do the parts you don't want to do.
Well, and I think being able to automate some of the drudgery is huge, so that you can be more expressive in other ways. And also being able to like, here, like if you were doing an event and you wanted to have like a multi-step form of like, we see a lot of B2B companies that are going and having some type of dinner or maybe a wine tasting or something along those lines, and they want to be able to do a multi-step form, but it's only going to live for maybe like 12 days, right? I think this is a perfect example of how to be able to get there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, this might be, I don't know, like the wrong way of using something, which is like, that's a lot of how we've worked in Webflow is doing it the wrong way. I mean, could you go in and just kind of prompt a series of components or if like a full page layout, or, what's your guidance on when to be able to kind of like drag elements onto the stage and build things quote unquote traditionally versus like kind of prompting, a hero left and right, a three up, things that aren't actually that interactive, but could just be easier to prompt rather than compose.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, we're thinking a lot about just the future of this sort of workflow in general and how these two live side by side. Like I said, at some point it should be flexible. Like you shouldn't have to
Yeah.
think about one type of thing versus another thing. You should just be able to like focus on the task you have and not worry about what tool to use. You could absolutely right now ask it to build out an entire page. It would be like a component. You could ask it to build out a component with slots,
Yep.
and then like slot other components into that. You could build out a page and build out a bunch of smaller components and then drag them onto the page. I think that if you're knowledgeable and flexible, it's very easy to think about how you want to dial in that balance. I do think that as we evolve this and as we bring, more interoperability with the things people expect from Webflow, so again, like visual editing, CMS,
Yeah.
the lines will start to blur more, and you're going to have to think a lot less about which one of those you want to do. It is just like a reality of living right now that building with AI does come with a cost. The cost is constantly changing. We're constantly working to bring it down. I think it's actually like pretty low right now, and we're always working to figure out like what models do we use and what harnesses and what context do we use to reduce the cost even further. How do we make it so that you don't have to use an agent at all when you don't want, when you know, if it's something where you don't need to. But you asked this question, like, when does someone do one versus the other? It's right now a function of like, you know, the traditional way of building things has everything that you expect from Webflow, and this new way of building things doesn't quite have all of those things yet, but it has so much more new stuff that you can do.
Yeah.
That's one part of the equation. The other part is just, again, like token cost, which is a thing that we're constantly battling and trying to improve, you know, in favor of our users on an ongoing basis.
Sure. I mean, I think that makes sense. And, you know, because it is moving into a consumption model. And I think, if anything, people understanding like token cost and that actually, you know, that nets out into like energy cost in the real world and like how many data centers we have out there. And, you know, maybe being a little more judicious around like what we're like, how we're working, just as you would, like, I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, I'm just gonna like leave my car on all day long because that just uses gas. And I think that same type of thing of like, oh, well, I could walk to the store today, or I'm gonna, you know, go and drive part way and then walk part way. Anyway, lots of metaphors there, but you know, I think that makes sense. And you were mentioning things that are, you know, the visual editing of the last mile is going to be huge. You know, being able to use properties inside of here, that's something that you can already do, or is that something that's coming?
Yeah, you can already do that. You can ask the assistant to add specific properties for you.
Cool.
I think right now it tends to be on the more conservative side, but
Okay.
you can ask it for anything. And the way I think about it, this isn't maybe necessarily how everyone thinks about properties, but within Webflow, you have visual editing for so much, like all the CSS and like
Yeah.
all the styling, even like interactions and stuff like that. Now that you can do more in Webflow and have like abstract concepts that maybe only exist within this specific component you built or this page of yours. For example, you might build an animated hero section that has like 3D graphics in the background. Like, you know, I've seen a lot of like more cutting edge companies do that sort of thing. There isn't a standardized slider for like the roundness of the corners on the cube in your animated background, but props are effectively like an extension of visual editing for these unique things that exist within this component you built. And so I think that props are actually like a very powerful way to explore without an agent. You know, it's kind of like bring things back towards like the visual editing realm, which is another like an idea that we're exploring. Props exist now, but we're thinking about like, how do we fully take advantage of these for this, like these new variables within a component that didn't exist in Webflow sites before?
Yeah. I mean, and even the maturity of components is something that's accelerated over the last 12 months. And now being able to do that with AI code components, it's just adding a lot of capability in there.
Yeah, 100%.
We've got a couple questions here, so I was just gonna pull. Let's see, Pitar, we've got some questions here. And he's asking first around AI. Ray, you've got a question. So let's maybe take the last 10 minutes and get some questions in. So real quick one back on the pricing component. So if you want to throw in your question there, we'll get to it. How do you edit that text? All right, let's look at how to edit the text.
Yeah. So right now, the option is to use a prop. I've mentioned that we're working on visual editing, and that's going to be coming fairly soon. You will be able to edit text the same way that you edit text on any Webflow component, which is just click on it and change it. It is just the reality of how this type of code works that you will then need to submit that change to the agent to ask it to make it, just because there's a difference between like the back end and the front end rendered code. But you'll be able to just like click on it and say like, oh, I don't want to say transparent, and make that change. Ask the agent to make that change, and it will make it for you. And we're also exploring ways to make that deterministic so that you don't have to ask the agent. But right now, again, in the live version right now, you have to ask the agent. Soon you will be able to visually edit copy changes.
Cool. So soon visual edit of copy changes as well as kind of like the general layout. And then you said once you finish that, then you resubmit it or you sort of like save it. What does that look like?
Yeah, you would submit it to the agent. So for example, I could, just as like an arbitrary change, I could add something here and I would have to tell the agent to make that change. But again, we're constantly exploring how to involve the agent less into just make things return like this last 10 to 20%, as you mentioned, to the way that it used to be, which was just easy and what people are used to.
Yep. Yeah. And I imagine as well, like one of the things that starts to become complex and you have to maybe consider is like, okay, I'm going to go in and let's say you're adding padding to that, but this is using pre-existing classes. And so all of a sudden, like you might be blowing out classes on another page, or just like how to be able to, just as you would work in Webflow, I think be kind of aware of what you're working on. And so this has a variety of classes that have been added to an individual item. Does it reuse classes? So if you have sort of like a class system like Mast or something along those lines, like how aware of it is that? And then Ray, I see you have another comment here on like you have a hacky version of something like this that you're building. I'd love for you to throw it into the LinkedIn comments so that we can look at it. I mean, you can throw it in here as well and I can add it to LinkedIn.
But to your question, like we don't have full class support yet. It's another thing we're working on.
Okay.
It's like there's a long journey of bringing this type of code up to parity with what people expect from Webflow.
Yep.
And we're working on it, but we don't have full class support yet. But I agree, like it's something that requires thinking through because we don't want this new paradigm to like we don't want to kind of take a quick shot at it and somehow make things worse for people,
Yeah. Well, and I think the decisions that are being made right now have these sort of like branching decisions. And I think that to have these as you were saying, like these are code components, they have a sandbox. If you wanted to be able to drag some stuff up or down, then great, no big deal. And you're not necessarily going to have to ruin, like, oh, you go and change the type hierarchy and then all of a sudden it's like you've ruined everything else because you're prompting something in one page. So I can see that merging, taking a little bit more consideration.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So and then let's see, so Peter is asking here, AI code components are amazing and it can pull variables to use the same colors, type, and stay on brand. But styling the components to match the design direction can be challenging, spacing, hierarchy, etc. So outside of Webflow, we've solved this with Figma MCP. Is it possible of maybe adding an MD file or skill upload that we could export outside of the project and the LLM can build it with a more clear instructions / direction? So I think that's maybe like a product feature request.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good one. I mentioned earlier in our talk that like we're not trying to lock people down to a specific way of working, and we acknowledge that there's a lot going on. We are working on we're thinking a lot about the things you're talking about, skills, design.md, both within Webflow and outside of Webflow. Like, how do we work with this information? I think the future we're moving towards is one in which a lot of this information is just like very plainly coded in like a markdown file or a text file. People have hypothesized that at some point LLMs will move on from using English to like some machine specific language, which is a weird thing to think about. But the point is like because it's so plainly encoded, it's very modular, and you could ideally have a single definition of your design system that can be used everywhere. And so we're working on the sort of thing you're talking about, Peter. We're talking about it. It's not a thing you can do right now, but hopefully more to come soon.
Awesome. Well, Neel, I really appreciate you sitting down today and kind of just walking through what you've been working on, how you've been building. Curious, like, as you think about the next, like, 6 months, year, what is it that you're excited about, or what are you kind of thinking about next? And it could be about what you're working on here or just sort of broadly.
Yeah. This is me kind of speaking from my own perspective to some extent, as like everything is. But obviously, we're seeing more. We're seeing more in terms of agentic engineering happening, where people might, rather than working with Claude live, they would actually just kind of kick off a task overnight where it plans and they review the plan it comes up with and the architecture, and then they say, "Yeah, go build it," and then it builds the app that they've asked for, or like the feature that they've asked for. And then they review it, and like you do with any code, you take it the last like 10 to 20% on your own with its help. So that's kind of like the agentic engineering workflow that I'm paying a lot of attention to and that I find really exciting. And what, to kind of bring it back to this conversation, what I think could end up happening is kind of the marketing counterpart of that workflow. So, like, this is maybe very SaaS specific, but if engineering teams are going to be releasing more features and building more features, let's say hypothetically 3 times as many or 5 times as many, or perhaps, they build a feature in a week instead of a quarter, that's going to require an acceleration of how we build out marketing assets. And so perhaps if let's talk about the product flow again. Like you kick off your agent with an idea, it builds out a spec that you review with your team, and you're like, make these changes. It then builds the feature overnight over the course of an hour. There's this ongoing debate about long running agents. Maybe it builds the marketing too. And it's like, hey, here's the marketing plan. What do you think? And you're like, oh, actually, we're going to do a social post for this one, or we needed 2 emails. It has access to your design system. It has access to your content architecture, your brand, tone, and voice. And it's able to like build the marketing materials. And like you do with software, you kind of work with something to take it the last 10 to 20% to get it right. But that's kind of where my head's going. Obviously, it's very difficult to tell what is going to happen 6 months from now at this point, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
That's really insightful, and yeah, I agree. Like, it's hard to even open up Twitter now without being like, everything has changed. So it's cool to be able to talk with you around like how you're building for that change, and then I guess again like how you're thinking about not just building for the web, but building for how marketing teams are communicating and trying to get credit for all the work that they're doing, which is, is accelerating.
Yeah, 100%.
So cool. Well, thank you again for joining. And just as a last plug, you've got your live that's coming up next week, in person in Atlanta, on the 9th. And that will be, where is that again? And it's on Meetup where people can find it.
Yeah, it's on Meetup. It's going to be at the West Side Motor Lounge. I'll drop a link to the details for how you can respond and find us in the comments on LinkedIn. So if anyone's interested, if you live in Atlanta, we'd love to see you.
Awesome. And then if anyone is interested in getting in on like a beta or a preview, what's the best way to kind of raise a hand there?
I would say find me on LinkedIn. We have a few community channels and partner channels if you want to reach out that way as well. Like I said, we're beta testing a lot of enhancements to our AI code generation, including visual editing and many other things. And we're always looking for engaged and excited testers.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of what has been built in Webflow has definitely been built in collaboration with a lot of people that are on early betas that are either awesome or broken or somewhere in between. And so it's always great to be able to kind of co-create in that manner.
100%.
So awesome. Well, Neel, great to be able to see you today. I hope you're able to enjoy some of the weather this weekend in Atlanta. And I look forward to catching up with you again. Hopefully I'll see you on the 9th, which is that a Thursday? What is that? A
It's
Wednesday?
Tuesday, I think.
Tuesday.
Although
Okay.
you have me questioning it now. I don't even
I
know.
know, I know. I am don't speaking of travel planning, like don't have me do travel planning because I will get directionally close, but there is a big difference between going to like Cincinnati and Cleveland, even though they both start with C's, which I have done. So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Well, how about this? I'm gonna quick say thank you to everyone that was able to jump in and join. We'll be posting this up on YouTube and then snippets on LinkedIn. If you have other questions, drop them in the comments. I will route them to Neel or maybe anyone else that I can think of. And yeah, Neel, if you can just hang out 1 second, I'll stop streaming and then I'll make sure that everything uploads. So
Sounds good.
thanks very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
Mason.